So we have a pathologist shortage, we have delayed cancer times, errors, sort of like data's not reproducible between pathologists and things like that. I would first start at a different point, really. I would track back and say, pathologists are amazing at what they do, and amazing how they do it, and how quick they do it, and how effectively they do it. AI companies have a real sort of steep road to become better than a pathologist. When you look at an effective pathologist's work, they make very little errors, amazingly few errors for the amount of glass they push through a microscope.
And fast.
Yeah, and the fast in their evaluations, which sometimes, they come out semi-quantitative, but when they just look at it and they can say, yes, this is 50%, for example, it's amazing. And all these decisions are having quite considerable effects on the patient's journey.
Welcome, my digital pathology trailblazers. Today's episode is brought to you by Aiforia. And my guest is Dr. Richard Doughty. And Richard, you are a person with a very rare combination of specialties. Dr. Doughty is a veterinary pathologist and an MD pathologist. And he also supports Aiforia with their AI efforts in the domain of veterinary or MD or general pathology. Richard, welcome to the show. Tell the listeners about your background and how did you become an MD and veterinary pathologist? Because I just want to give a little bit of context. It's basically more or less doing medical training twice with residency into different domains. And you also worked in both areas. So yeah, let's talk about that first.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I started off originally wanting to be a veterinarian, a clinical veterinarian, and I went to vet school and was exposed to so many different species, and I began to be very fascinated by pathology. And veterinary pathology is amazing. You could be looking at a slide from an elephant and a slide from a dog or a cat in the next time you look under the microscope. And so I just started to decide, okay, I want to be a veterinary pathologist. And then when I left vet school, I went to the Royal Vet College.
So did you know already in vet school that you can become a pathologist as like a full-time job? Because I didn't know. I did my vet school in Poland, and only when I went to Germany for a kind of externship, I learned that you actually can be a veterinary pathologist full-time.
Yeah, I guess I did. I was always looking midway into the vet school. I started to think, what else can I do with my vet degree? The clinic is the obvious place, but what other opportunities? Because in reality, it's one of the broadest biomedical degrees you can ever do. And so it offers so many opportunities. So I was looking at things from, sort of environmental sciences, One Health, and veterinary pathology.
I was looking
really
into One
appealed.
Health at some point as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what I did is I took a year out of vet school and studied a master's of science in toxicology. And that made me aware of the role of pathologists in regulatory toxicology and specifically toxicology pathology. So that sort of made me...
Shout out to DocsPath.
Absolutely. And I had some really good... Tom Williams from GSK, Ian Pyra, I think he's now maybe Amgen. They really sort of wanted pathologists to join the field, or wanted vets to join the field. So they were so helpful. And then so that was really my plan after the sort of third year of vet school, was to do pathology, and actually specifically really to do ToxPath. But as most careers go, you meander, you find opportunities, you hop to another thing. So, but when I left vet school, I went to the Royal Vet College and did a year there. But at that time, they were desperate for tox pathologists. So I was recruited into tox pathology after a year and went to AstraZeneca, where they had an incredible training system for me, where I learned lots of different toxicological studies, lots of different species. And then after that, I jumped over to another company, General Electric Healthcare, who were developing contrast media for radiology. And that's when I started to think, I've learned many species, but the one species maybe I haven't learned anything on is the target species for most of these things that I'm actually looking into toxicology for. And it almost felt like sort of, completing the circle by completing the jigsaw puzzle by studying human medicine. So
I think they should have some kind of a combined degree, at least for pathologists,
Yeah,
but you're
of
just
course.
a pathologist and you can do anything, like animals and people. Because I don't think they do it in in veterinary pathology, but in veterinary medicine. But in MD, in human medicine, you can, for example, enter residencies from different backgrounds. I mean, you're still an MD, but like you can do dermatopathology as a dermatologist and as a pathologist.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of these combinations that I don't really see in veterinary medicine. I think they should do something like that for pathology. You're a pathologist, you're a pathologist. You know all
Yeah,
the species.
exactly. And I think the most important criteria is your interest and your willingness to learn. And if you have
Hmm.
both of those, then you will then you'll do well in any subject. Yeah. So in the end, I coming back to the story, I went to human medical school, worked as a clinical vet a lot of the time while doing medicine. And it was quite strange. I'd be doing a cesarean on a dog in the evening and then going to the human hospital and seeing exactly the same operation. So it was quite amusing. But when I was finished, I started to think, okay, what am I going to do? And then I decided eventually to specialize in human pathology or anatomic pathology as you stay in the States. And
And then you subspecialized as well, right?
yeah, exactly. So my
Because
initially
it was
my
too boring. Like,
yeah my
why would you just be a pathologist? You can even subspecialize.
Yeah, so I eventually did mainly for a while cytopathology, but now I'm mainly focused on neuropathology at the moment. So that's
Mhm.
occupying my mind. Plus, of course, the work I do with Aiforia, which is something a little different and gives me a bit of variety in my daily
Right.
practice.
'Cause, like,
So
your life is not interesting enough.
we have to find something
But
else to do. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but
you'll
but I
see, I
think
think AI is a super cool vehicle to just contributing to different areas of interest, different areas of biomedical sciences. So, you being an MD and veterinary pathologist and a DVM pathologist, what unique perspective does this bring to your role at Aiforia and to the AI work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, as you know, pathology is pathology. It doesn't matter whether it's a fungal disease in a mole or whether it's adenocarcinoma in a lung of a human. The basic morphological principles are the same. I think so. So in many ways, I mean, Aiforia is very unique, and this is what I was attracted to. It has probably one of the broadest portfolios in the AI pathology industry in that it covers preclinical, it's also got an interest in veterinary pathology, but it also has the human pathology side, the clinical side. And I think that's what really attracted me to, for example, Aiforia, was that I like that idea that I would be working with maybe some preclinical projects, veterinary projects, and human projects, and also interacting with both medical and veterinary pathologists. So it was that sort of that really attracted me. What I think you bring as a veterinary or and human pathologist is that you bring that variety. You can probably laterally think. You've seen a lot of things. You maybe think a little bit out the box, and that can be often an advantage when you're trying to think up strategies uh, for sort of setting up layers and things like that. So I think, I think it's that breadth of knowledge that is really important. Also, it's that breadth of knowledge of workflows because veterinary pathologists and human pathologists do have sort of subtly different workflows, and so I think
Yes.
that can often be utilized in developing sort of clinician centric AI, what's going to augment us. So, and that's what all pathologists, and I think that's why it's an advantage to have that background in both veterinary and human. So,
Mhm.
yeah, this isn't just for medics; it's for the whole breadth of pathology.
I want to highlight two things that you said. So, one is that the morphological principles of tissue are the same, especially in mammals. It's basically the same. And I think people are not aware of that because in the pharmaceutical industry, most of the pathologists are veterinary pathologists, and they often work on human tissues, like all the discovery things, biomarker quantification, a lot of things happening on human tissues are being handled by veterinary pathologists. And I think like the general public doesn't know that you, even though as a veterinary pathologist you don't have um the authority to diagnose, you still can recognize and use all the knowledge that you learned in veterinary pathology residency. And the second thing is workflow. not only veterinary versus MD, but very much diagnostic versus toxpath work. I think because TalkSpot is so niche, few people and few companies outside of this space are aware how this workflow affects how you then later interact with your slides. So definitely a super cool combination. Um, so so having pathologists involved in AI development, contributing to creating effective and trustworthy solutions, like why is this important?
Yeah, I think I can take this in two ways or at two levels. Firstly, why should there be physicians or veterinarians involved in med tech in general? And then also more specifically, why should pathologists be involved in AI pathology? I think at that bigger picture, I think sort of having vets or physician pathologists in med tech is really important because they bring sort of clinical expertise and they bring credibility to that company. Vets like to talk to vets, doctors like to talk to doctors. They're familiar with the training, they're familiar with their terminology, they're familiar with the culture of medicine. So they like that sort of connection. So that's a very, very good way of how a physician or a veterinarian can get leverage in a company. Also, it's a bridge between the technology and the clinical practice. Yeah, the clinician can essentially act as a sort of crucial bridge between tech developers and the clinical community. And they can also translate that complex medical requirements into what essentially become technical specifications for the developing of a model. So I think that's where they can assist very much. The other things, I think, like regulatory compliance guidance. I mean, that's a very central role. For example, for a physician or a veterinarian, also developing user-centric design in the interface that the pathologist is going to have with the system. Other things are
Mhm.
very much broader, and if a clinician has list to develop that role, is sort of market insights and strategic directions for the company. Where are they going to go? What are the problems? I mean, you're living it daily when you're a pathologist. The irritation of having to, not the irritation, but the challenge of having to go through 15 meningioma slides to find those hotspots, those mitosis. It takes a long time, and it is intellectual, but it is also volume. So if we can get things to help us, and you will only know that if you're a pathologist screening through these things, knowing where these sort of pressure points for us are. The other things are, I think, where clinicians can add value to an AI company is through education and advocacy to the profession in general, teaching them what this technology. You're really central in understanding how this technology works, how it's been intended to work, and what maybe the pathology profession needs to equip itself with in the future to be able to really utilize this to its maximum. So I think
Mhm.
that's one level as being a clinician. I would say specifically as a pathologist, I would say defining relevant use cases. So which models shall we focus on? What do I see most of each day? Because it's a market we're trying to sell. So we can't, for example, pick a very rare tumor or something that nobody would want. So that's sort of picking the models and finding where is the volume. I would say also, of course, data annotation and model training. That's really important. If it's not going to be exclusively pathologists doing that, at least the pathologist needs to have some control over the ground truth and
Yeah,
quality controlling
supervised.
what is being done. I would say validation and testing. That's also really important for the pathologist. That really gives them an insight. I've felt at Aiforia, being involved in the validation and testing gives me an insight. How is this model working? Almost how is it sort of thinking
Mhm.
to try and understand it, and also to try and understand how to make it better. I think also feedback on workflow integration, things like that. Pathologists like to communicate with pathologists, and I think, as I've said before, and I think that flow of understanding of how we do it as today, and how we might do it in the future is really important. I think also sort of developing trust because not everybody is bought into the idea of AI coming in, or they maybe don't understand what AI is going to do for them. So I think we
Yeah,
also
I
have a
think
role.
many people don't know how those tools are
Yeah,
used and extrapolate things from, I call it the consumer AI, to to what would happen in the medical domain,
yeah,
and are often afraid. But there are also two ends of or two sides of that coin. Either they're super afraid and say it's not going to fly in the medical space at all, or they're overly enthusiastic, saying like, "How I have it in my phone? How come I cannot have it while accessing electronic health records?" Or like uh, because yeah, it's either fear or like
Yeah.
disappointment that it's not there yet and when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the roles a pathologist can have in the company is that if you think about technology companies in general, they're well known for hype. So, and that's the way
Mm,
the industry's built. It's built to hype something up. It relies on that sort of investment to keep going. But as a physician, as a veterinarian, and a pathologist, we know the hype can be dangerous for our patients. So in some respects, so we can also ground it a little bit, make the pathologists understand what is this technology, how do we expect it to work, or how are we hoping it's going to work, and guide them through it. So I think it really is a partnership between the AI companies and the profession in general. And it's not for the companies to dictate how this is going to happen. It's almost holding hands together and sort of leading our way through it. A lot of this is new for both the companies and the profession. So we really need to find a way through the sea in the dark, and I think
mm.
that's best done with us together.
I'm
Absolutely.
gonna I'm gonna tell you a sad thing. Most of the AI companies they do not have pathologists on staff. And I kind of lived through the difference. Well, maybe they have somebody like in a more managerial position, but not really hands-on working with the teams, and they rely on collaboration with customers or collaboration with some networks. It is not the same, and I
No.
lived through this. Like you don't have so much skin in the game. The moment you don't have good communications, you're like, okay, I don't care anymore. I'm gonna do my job that's like within the scope of my responsibilities. I don't have to keep communicating with this partner or that partner if they don't get me or like don't want to understand, don't want to listen to me. And on the other hand, the customers are never part of your organization. It's
Yeah.
somebody you want to deliver a product for and sell something to. And if you don't have like a representative of the customer within your organization, um, from from the uh, from the partnerships that I have observed, read about, and lived through, uh, if you don't have this kind of representation, in this case, in form of a pathologist who knows what pathologists do, the collaboration suffers.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I couldn't
um,
agree with you more. And I think this has been maybe a suffering of technology companies.
mhm,
That they haven't maybe acknowledged that it's really important to have not just external consultants, but also physicians, veterinarians within the company integrated at every level. From deciding maybe how the model is going to be initiated, how it's developed, not least ground
mhm,
truths, for example, and how and up to the levels of sales and marketing. Really, I think
yeah,
that there should be an element of pathologist input in all of those. I mean, it's a business, so of course it has another set of elements to it that are independent of the medicine. But medicine, you can't be a company claiming you're making a product that will augment somebody that you don't even have in the company.
mhm,
That's not good practice in general. It's a little bit like maybe being selling cars, but you've never driven a car. How can you truly sell it? It doesn't make any
yes,
sense at all. So,
very
and in some
much.
respects, the person selling the car doesn't need to know the technical components of the coding, the engine in the car, but they need to know how it runs, how it functions, when how it feels to drive it. And that's the same with AI, I think. And I think
Yeah,
certainly
what is it
Aiforia
good
does
for?
understand
What
that.
terrain is it good for?
Exactly.
Like
So
all the use cases, and everybody has
yeah,
a car, so that's kind of nobody questions that anymore. But
yeah,
it's very much the same principle. And
yeah,
one thing I want to add is it has to be somebody who's gonna get upset on the inside of the organization if things are not like done properly, and will invest energy to change it.
Yes.
Because if you're working with external consultants, it's not going to happen. The consultant, and every now and then I consult, I'm like, I give you the information you're asking for. You can do whatever you want with this information. Most of the time, like, you don't use them the way they should be used, but that's okay. That's the role of a consultant.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who's in the organization, has skin in the game, wants the company to succeed, and is a pathologist, has a totally uh, different influence, I would say, on the whole industry.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
yeah,
I would
so that
agree.
was my
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're
experience.
right, and I think it's very different being within the company, and then, as you say, with an external consultant, the balance of power maybe there is a little bit different. You don't want to necessarily uh, highlight disadvantages and things like that. Whereas when you're,
I mean, even
I
if you do, it's like you're not gonna highlight it 5 times and go to the right people
no,
and say,
no,
hey, and figure out like a different way to talk to them, figure out a way to get along. No, it's like information. Here you have it. Do
yeah,
whatever you want with it. You hired me to get you this information.
yeah,
Please,
I
the
totally
next
agree
step
with you.
is onto you. So,
Uh,
but obviously, this is not without challenges. So, what challenges have you encountered in bridging this gap between technical and medical aspects of AI development?
I think on one level it's interesting because I think some respects that many companies. Of course, when you see the typical advertising from many companies, is that we have a pathologist shortage, we have delayed cancer times, errors, sort of like data is not reproducible between pathologists and things like that. And I would first start at a different point, really. I would track back and say pathologists are amazing at what they do, and amazing how they do it and how quick they do it and how effectively they do it. Uh, AI companies have a real sort of steep road to become better than a pathologist. When you look at an
Yes,
effective pathologist's work, it is they make very little errors, amazingly few errors for the amount of glass they push through a microscope.
they're
And
fast.
yeah, and the fast in their evaluations, which sometimes, they come out semi-quantitative, but when they just look at it and they can say, yes, this is 50%, for example, it's amazing. And all these decisions are having quite considerable effects on the patient's journey, that's behind the sample. So I think I would first say, don't approach it that pathologists aren't, are these people
Good
constantly making
enough, and
mistakes,
you need
constantly.
something better because that's what you have, right? That's what whole medicine relies on pathological
Mm,
diagnosis. Most like the most public facing aspect is going to be tumor diagnostics, cancer diagnostic, oncology, but there's that's like a fraction of pathology, um, and
yeah,
they are doing a great job being those who like determine what's going to happen next, because this is the step that
exactly.
determines everything.
Yeah, and I think when I think about what my role has been in I4, it's maybe sort of given that sort of reality of what the daily life of being a pathologist is. So we have incredibly competent software engineers and biomedical scientists, but they haven't sat down and picked up a glass and put it down and know you have to write a diagnosis. It's going to have a quite considerable effect on the patient. So I think giving them how we do it, why we do it the way we do it, because it's not really obvious sometimes why we do the things.
Mm-mm.
If you're from the outside looking in, it can look bizarre. So it's, for example, with
And you know what
prostate.
I realized recently? Not only is it not obvious between pathologists and computer scientists, or like pathologists and non-pathologists and non-medical people, it's also not that obvious between TalkSpath workflow and diagnostic people, and between specialties. Like radiology is a pretty closely related specialty. It's image based. When I talk to radiologists on my podcast, neither I am like super familiar with their workflow, nor do they know what's happening in pathology. Like they don't know. And there is a lot of things in parallel, but you can feel the discrepancy. So that kind of highlights okay, how much explanation and like showing should go into training somebody who's going to build tools for pathologists.
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, and some of these, for example, if you think about radiology and the example you used in pathology, they're both image-based specialties, but they're very, they're not the same. They do very different things, and the way their workflow is different, and those nuances are really important. So certainly, I think a lot of we have thought, or there's been a lot of discussion in the literature about, what can we learn from radiology, and we can learn a lot, but also we have to find
Yeah.
our own path in how to do this, because we're not radiology. And so our needs are unique to our speciality, and that always has to be remembered. I do believe. Yeah. Mm.
Mhm. So when you just started, like, what was the biggest surprise to you? I'm gonna give you my like surprise. I shouldn't have been surprised, but basically, when I joined and was working with image analysis scientists, my first like realization was, hey, they don't really understand the tissue at sometimes at the level necessary to conduct the project. So my first thing was like, okay, let me prepare materials to teach
Mm.
people how to recognize tissue. That was like my not really a surprise, but first like action item when I joined an image analysis company. Did you have something like that? That you
Yeah, I
said,
think.
okay, that would be the first thing I should start working on.
Yeah, I think as pathologists, we work with tissues every day. Histopathology is our central thing, a central skill set. And I think often we don't. It's very difficult for us to
Take it
understand
for granted,
how
probably.
little, for example, most biomedical science courses will have little to no histology. If you think about a vet coming out or a medic coming out of a vet or medical school, they in fact have very little histology. Many of them maybe wouldn't even be able to, they'd know it's a tissue, but they might wonder where it's from. I think I agree with you that sort of stepping back and saying, okay, you know, this means this, almost sort of giving a crash 101 on
Hmm.
on histology, I think is important, because I remember I was talking to one project owner about, for example, desmoplasia, desmoplastic response to tumors, and I was just talking about it, and I didn't really realize, but they were wondering, is that a subtype of tumor? And of course, it's a response, and to me, it just seemed so obvious. I was talking about it, and then okay, then after put the hand on the wall, is it a subtype, a morphological subtype? And then you realize you have to step back and talk about, educate them, I guess, same as they're
Yeah,
educating us about the technology aspects,
exactly.
which I don't
E-
understand as well as them. I
Exactly. And I
mean,
think this is the bridge part that the pathologist is the bridge between the technical and the users. Um and it comes with like realizing, okay, what's everybody else's expertise? How can we convey my expertise? Because I mean, it's not pathology specific that you being highly trained, like straight off training or like doing something every day, you assume that other people understand you. They don't, neither do we understand a lot of things that we would like to have
yeah,
explained to us.
yeah.
Mm,
And I think it's interesting, because I always thought to probably be in an AI company, you should be a pathologist or a clinician with a lot of high tech knowledge. But in fact, now I backtrack and think probably the most useful for a company is a clinician with no technology knowledge, because if they can teach that person, or that person's coming with a perspective that they don't know anything, and there will be, unfortunately, some pathologists out there who are very, should we say, technology averse. And we need to win those over as well if we're going to. So we need to understand what a non-tech savvy pathologist would, how they learn technology in some respects.
So how much like technology? I will disagree here because I think
Mm,
if you don't, and you can learn it on the job if you are um, open minded and
mm,
agile
mm,
and see what's needed. because to be able to convey the pathology information needed for other people, you need to speak their language. So if you're talking to developers, if you're talking to image analysis scientists, you need to at least have a basic understanding of those concepts, because then what I have seen is you can translate their concepts into what is pathologically relevant. So I have this term of computer vision to pathology vision translation, where I explain, okay, if you just need to detect cells, that's going to be object detection. If you need to, for example, um, distinguish epithelial tumor region from the stromal region, that's going to be semantic segmentation. And if you want to like measure everything, that's going to be instance segmentation. And like I have like this glossary that um, you use a technical term and then you show on the slide what does this mean and when should it be used. So in that regard, I think to support the company, you should have that understanding. But to use a product, you don't need any of this. Well, maybe you do, because
Yeah,
that the use determining the use case, and like so, because at some point it's going to be prevalent enough that people are going to be shopping for different things. They need to know what they want from this algorithm. I mean,
yeah,
they would ask for support from the company, but basically, like you know, kind of what you're looking for, so you need to understand the limitations of the method that you're going to be using.
of course. And I think what I more meant was when you come into the company, it should be
Hmm.
the technology side, much like we are teaching them the pathology. They should be
Hmm.
able to teach a pathologist what these technical aspects are, and so they can become. And they should be able to teach you in a way we can teach them pathology, so they can understand it, they can use it, and they know the limitations of or the complexity of the things they're dealing with. So I would agree with you, but I would say that I meant more
You can also
when
disagree.
you're
It's
coming
fine
in.
to
Yeah,
disagree with
absolutely.
me.
Hmm. No, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just nuancing it.
That's okay. So, do you guys have a good process at Aiforia, like for both sides? Do you guys have, how do you deal with that when you get new pathologists, when you get new computer scientists that should work together? Um, do you have some solution for that
Yeah, I mean, at
to get
Aiforia, we
everybody
have.
up to speed fast?
Yeah, I mean, as with any sort of young company that's scaling up, and there's always changes in the way things are organized and the way things are done. But at the moment, we have sort of project owners, and they own that particular project, and then a pathologist or pathologists will come in and assist them, and that will be things like setting up ground truths, teaching the project specialists how to annotate, maybe quality controlling those annotations, but also, for example, with our prostate project, it would be the project owner would gather the 3 or 4 pathologists once a week, and we go through problem annotations, how best maybe to annotate something to get the best out of it. So we're all fairly consistent, and also we can discuss problems or you know, or discuss, for example, borderline cases. How are we going to deal with
Mhm,
these? How will we deal with something that we're trying to essentially annotate certainty when 2 other pathologists think it's this and the other 2 think it's that? So things like that. So I think we have I would say our prostate project was incredibly successful with that, and that weekly process, I think, got us to know the project owner, project specialist better, and they probably also got to know how us pathologists think as well. So I think that's a very, very good idea. One thing we've always discussed or have discussed since I've been there is this concept of project pathologists who sort of they
mhm,
own the pathology side of it and they run hand in
mhm,
hand with the project owner. And it's not necessarily they will do all the work, but they will maybe have a little bit better understanding of the model of how it works and what its weaknesses, what its strengths are. So
mhm,
so I think we have a very good process. We also have quite regular meetings where the whole science team will meet up and say, can we do things better? What
mhm,
are the challenges we've had and things like that. So I think you have to actively work not to develop a technology biology divide. I think you really have to work at it. It's so important because they are 2 different types of people sometimes, and they can't very easily deviate from each other. So that's always a challenge, I think, for management to hold those two together. But I think at
I,
Aiforia we have a good process for that.
I
Absolutely, and
love
that's
this.
the
I
success
love
of
this
it.
concept of project pathologist, and I like very much like the regular meetings and reviewing what's going on, because it's so easy to just like get so absorbed with the project and then just like keep doing your thing without checking back with your teammates of different expertise. And um in this space, I don't think we can afford it at the moment, at this stage,
Mm.
at the maturity stage of that technology. It has to be constant feedback, um, and having. I mean, of course, I'm biased because I'm a pathologist, and I think this is how it should be. But I'm very happy that this is how it is at Aiforia. Um,
Yeah. Mm. And I think it's and it's what's been very really interesting is, for example, I'm based in Oslo and some of the pathologists are based in Sweden and Helsinki, that you can interestingly develop a diagnostic culture in each place where maybe my grade 3 is their grade 4, for example. It's very interesting how you can develop these sort of localized. And I think one of the advantages, for example, having these group pathologists is that you can to a degree sort of try and even those out a little bit and get a model that's, what we're not trying to do is develop a sort of Helsinki model that goes around the world. We want a model that works around the world. And that we're very conscious of. So I think having these meetings, understanding why somebody's come to that conclusion. Pathology is a discussion speciality. You should always be willing to defend what you see and explain why you see it and explain why you think you come to that conclusion. And that's what those meetings serve to do. And an enjoyable process. Pathologists like discussing.
Definitely. So for new people coming, like for pathology residents and practitioners, um, how do you think they should be prepared to take advantage of AI? Do you think there is a specific, like, do they need a specific curriculum, or you think they're like already tech savvy because they use this AI probably since it came out in their smartphones? Like, um, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there does need to be a certain amount of integration gradually into residency education. I think that's going to have to come because this is going to be the pathology residents today are going to be the people who are leading their profession in the future, and so they have to have that input, much the same as they need to have training in molecular pathology, which maybe 30, 40 years ago wasn't even part of it. It was pure morphology with an element of immune histochemistry. So I think we need to, and I think at the level you were discussing earlier, about what is segmentation, how do we,
Hmm.
how are models develop? Maybe you don't need to understand the coding, but just understand where has the model come from, and how
Hmm.
was it developed, and how do you use its model? How to understand what was the model intended to do? Because there's an incredible diversity amongst, well, first of what models are intended to do, but also what pathologists think models should do. So, for example, some think I think it should almost serve them the diagnosis, and they just look and say yes, sign it and out. Others sort of think it should be picking out the rare cases that we never see,
Hmm.
so that you can highlight those. And others think that it should be more of an augmentation, that we should be interacting with it. It should be showing us things, highlighting things, and we excluding them, including things, and sort of a more interactive. So I think we need to educate residents in what this process could be and how the diagnostic process will change. Because what I will say is AI will change that diagnostic process. It is
Hmm.
different from looking under a microscope and thinking, okay, what are my criteria for a grade 3 Gleason score, for example? Ding, 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 ding. Okay, that's what it is. This is going to be served to you in a way, and then you have so the cognitive process is a little bit different, and that they have
Yes.
to get used to, I think, and they have to understand that as well, and also how to get the most out of it because. Uh, we need to get them to sort of know how to get them. AI on its own is okay. us on our own are very good, but I think together we can be much better. And but we have to learn how to be much better. It doesn't come intuitively, I don't think.
So, what I have experienced recently in the last 2 years, a lot of discussions from different organizations, different societies, both MD and veterinary, that it should be included, but it's not yet included in the curriculum. So recently, I've came across a friend shared the Digital Pathology Academy, or it's by the European Society of Digital and Integrative Pathology. They have a course. So that's something official. It's called the ESDIP Academy. I didn't go through it yet. There was a course by um, National Histology
Yeah, National
and
Society
a
for Histotechnology has a digital
exactly National
pathology.
Society
Yeah,
for Histotechnology. They had a course. I don't know if they updated it. I have to check it because that was like already also like in 2019.
yeah.
And there was something. So there's like bursts of activity. Um, I have a YouTube channel where I try to provide this information. I have a few courses. So I think there is information and quality information out there, but it's not like you have to actively put effort into acquiring this knowledge. It's not that, oh, I'm doing a pathology residency and it's going to be included and I'm good to go after finishing the residency.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, I need to actively search for this information
Yeah.
and get a little bit more involved, um, which is fine, but I don't think everybody is aware of it.
No, and I think to a degree, I think if you look at the Radiological Society of North America, I mean, they have a very nice courses on AI at different levels that people can take. But like you say, you have to be actively interested to look for it and to do it. In some
Or you
respects,
need to be a member of a
yeah,
society,
exactly. And it's
which,
quite
when you're
expensive and
early in
things like
your
that. Yeah. So I almost think that there should be almost a sort of every resident, for example, we could take an example, in Denmark, in Norway, in Finland, should have to have at least a modular course or
Mhm.
online course in it, just so they know it. Not ideally, with things like AI, Aiforia, with the creators, why can't they have a go at making a little model during their residency, just to
Yeah.
understand the process and things like that. I think it can also come much earlier as well in medical school. So I think one thing that's a little bit interesting about Aiforia is they also, at
How
the
good would
moment, have
it
that
be to teach
educate.
histology like that,
Exactly,
Richard?
but that's what they have a capability with Aiforia to sort of use it as a teaching tool, and then you get used to using that interface with picking the slide, zooming in, having a look at something. So it's almost getting that culture, that sort of muscle memory and brain memory of using this. And this is what we do, a bit like as when you're in the clinic, you have your stethoscope around your neck, and then the first thing you do is put it in and have a listen to the chest. So
Mhm.
it should be a bit like that in pathology. And I think Aiforia has been a little bit unique, and it has had that educational element to it. And so there is a cohorts of medics, maybe they're not pathologists, but some of them will be, that are
That
used to
went
using the
to.
interface with it. But I think all residency there should be almost a standardized European or USA sort of AI driver's license sort of thing for residents. I think what's interesting about pathology contra radiology is digitalization and AI are all coming at once, whereas
Mhm.
radiology's had
Exactly.
20, 30 years of digitalization or 20 years of digitalization. And now they got very comfortable with that. And now they're thinking about AI. Whereas with us, it's all coming at once. And that's quite a big task in itself, but represents challenges, but also represents opportunities for better take up of using AI, I think, because it will be so integrated in the digitalization.
Mhm. So you know which organization I'm super proud of? The JPC, Joint Pathology Center, and their Wednesday slide conference rounds. This is something for veterinary pathologists during their residency. They have these slide conferences every week on Wednesday, and they are being scanned, and they have been scanned since I did my residency in 2012. So in the digital pathology years, it's a lot of years. So I was actually studying for my boards with those slides. I was like traveling, my microscope broke, and I was like, and the exam was on a microscope. I took my boards in 2017 and it was on a microscope. And there was always this like, oh, uh, I want to have my own microscope for the exam because I'm so comfortable with it. And at some point, I like my microscope was so bad and I was traveling that I started hating looking at the microscope. And I'm like, and that was my second attempt. And I was like, okay, I need to do something that will prevent me from failing again. I have to start looking at slides. And we started doing virtual conferences with a study buddy of mine. And I basically said, it's about the content, not about the form or the way you're looking at those images. If you understand let me first like learn everything what's in the image and then worry about the way I'm actually evaluating those images later. I
Yeah.
passed the boards. I was learning exclusively my second attempt exclusively on digital slides and sharing them through Skype. So, in terms of like high resolution, high quality, everything,
Impressive.
like people would think maybe not the best way to do it, but it was enough for me to learn the entities that I had to know
Yeah.
to pass the board.
Exactly. And look at you now. You are a board certified veterinary
Right,
pathologist.
I'm a board certified pathologist. I've learned on digital slides from JPC. So shout out
Yeah.
to JPC for making those slides available
Yeah.
digitally. And another story I wanted to tell you because when I said, "Oh, how cool would it be to learn histology like that?" Because when I was learning histology in vet school, we had this book where we had like one. It had a circle. It was like an exercise book, like a coloring book for students. And half of the circle had like the correct structure of some, and that was for pathology as well. For histology, we used to draw what we saw under the microscope. And for pathology, we have this exercise book. I have to get this exercise book and basically show people. But basically, we were doing what we're doing now for annotations. We were like delineating everything, but on paper. So it's basically like the same thing, but digital. And I think
Yeah.
that would be
Exactly.
super cool. Annotating, doing models, and having this be part of the pathology course.
Yeah.
That would be super
Exactly.
cool. We need to do it. We need to do it. If you guys are not doing it, I'm volunteering to help you out with it.
It has to happen. I mean, we have to be ready for this, and we have to make. We're doing our residents a disservice if we're not making them comfortable for what they're going to be getting in the future. And I think that's a role for us in industry, and also a role for the academic institutes to really address this and think, how are they going
Hmm.
to be dealing with this? Exciting.
Yeah. Yes. So, is there anything else that I should have asked, but I didn't? Anything?
No, I think that was it. I mean, I was going to cover a little bit about the cognitive things, but I don't. I think we've had a
Yeah.
good element to it.
Cognitive, like in which way?
A
Cognitive
little
things.
bit
Let's
like the
talk about
human
it.
factors, so a little bit like automation bias, sort of,
Oh yes, let's talk
and
about it. And let me tell you, it's a perfect spot to talk about it because I recently interviewed Dr. Famke Effner, and she wrote the
mm,
paper, "The Gold Standard Paradox,"
mm,
where whenever
mm.
I like hear about pathologists cannot agree, the annotations are not consistent, I think about her paper where she like mentions a lot of those biases. So yeah, let's talk about it. What is your take on that?
Well, I think, I mean, of course, with AI pathology, it essentially what we're developing is, at the moment at least, is a augmenting system. So it's a human AI interaction. That's what we want. We're not trying to just deliver the diagnosis and the pathology accepted. We want them to look at it and maybe say, okay, I want to remove this bit because I don't agree or something, and then or this bit isn't how I like it, and then they're getting the answer. So they're interacting with that. It's highlighting things, presenting things in a way that enables a human to cognitively sort of think at the highest they can. So I think in some respects the human factor is the sort of there's an X factor of we can develop models, but how do we interact with those models is the interesting thing. And I think probably the most obvious one that has been sort of spoken about is this automation bias. If if you become sort of so complacent, or the model, let's say, works very, very well, you start sort of not really critically assessing it anymore. You just start thinking, yes, 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 to these diagnoses. So you sort of almost cognitive offload yourself. It's interesting because really research from radiology actually shows quite varied results. It's really interesting. There was a work done, I think it was with a group in Harvard, who looked at how does AI make a radiologist better? And the answer is
Mhm.
it makes some better and it makes some worse. So if you are somebody who doesn't critically assess a model and you just agree with it all the time, they found that those sort of people, they actually do worse. They become worse radiologists than they would have done without the AI. But
Mhm.
if you're a radiologist on the top of your game, then you're probably always going to be on the top of your game. It doesn't really matter so
Regardless
much.
of the
Yeah, but if
tool
you're
that you're
if you're that
using.
sort of cadre of excellent radiologists, which should I say, average radiologists, I wouldn't like to offend them, but it's but they can really benefit from it because they might be the group that might be able to put a step up, and they are critical, they are looking at things, but they have a busy day and they have 30 things on the list, so this may really augment them to be much better radiologists. So I think it's not going to be one thing to everybody because humans are individuals. Pathologists, they're all different, and so the way we interact with it will be different as well. So, and I think that's a really interesting thing. For example, I think one thing I've noticed, especially amongst maybe the less, and we've touched on it a little bit, the less technology savvy, is this sort of algorithm aversion. And that's if they find one critical thing that it doesn't do as they think it should have. For example, it's graded. Again, I'll take decent, it's great. Or maybe breast grading, it's graded something grade 2 when they thought it was a grade 1. Then that's it for them. They don't want to touch that algorithm again. And the whole of AI is destroyed for them. So, again, it's sort of for the company and good people like yourself who are really educating the community to make them understand what is the model meant to be. It might not be right all the time, but that's not the point. You're meant to interact with it. So if you see it is doing something you're not sure about, then you need to interact with it, take it out, remove it, see what the result
Mhm.
comes up again. See, are you in agreement with this? It's not a one-way path. It's not information being thrown at you. It's information being given to you in a way that allows you then to assess, do I agree with this? If I take
Mhm.
something or I do something here, would it change it? And would I agree with it then? And I can write it out. So I think
Mhm.
that's the elements that I'm really interested in. How do we make interfaces that lower both algorithm aversion and also lower automation bias? The other thing I'm really interested in is the idea of skill degradation. If AI becomes well, how do we maintain our skills as pathologists? Do our skill just go down, or so how do we maintain that? Uh, well, first of all, will it de-skill us, or will it upskill us, or will it change our skills? It's an
I think
interesting
it's gonna
discussion.
change our skills.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
recently had a discussion that was about language models and automated reporting. And the concern was, hey, but then you learned, it took you so long to learn this report writing, and now it's like a tool is gonna just write it for you. And I compared it to a manual transmission versus automatic car. Like people in the US, most of the cars are an automatic transmission. They don't know how to drive stick. Do
Hmm.
they need to? No. They can just buy the automatic cars. This is the most prevalent car, and they can get wherever they want to get. It's so much easier, and you are still in the driver's seat.
Yeah,
Um, so the skill of driving a stick is like, why would you need it? And I'm from
exactly.
Poland, so I learned with the stick. But if I was to buy a car, I would buy an automatic. Please, why should I use my cognitive
Of
power
course.
to figuring out which gear to put it in? I mean, now I've been driving so long that it's automatic, so it's not really a problem for me.
Hmm.
But in traffic it is, and why not um, capitalize on this thing? So I think it's going to change
Yeah.
us for large language models. It's going to be okay. How do I communicate with the AI? Exactly what you're talking about, the interface.
Yeah.
what are the limitations of the method? And I think people, like you say, the algorithm aversion, it's funny because every method has limitations. Like
Mm,
PCR has limitations. You always have the control, negative and positive control. You have to interpret whether something was contamination. You just don't like blindly take it and it's like, oh,
mm,
these are my results here. You interpret it,
exactly.
and it's the same with whatever the output of the pathology algorithms are at the moment. Um, so yeah, the concept of method limitation is crucial here.
Exactly. I think the challenge for us with that AI pathology is so near to what we do. So PCR, we can
Hmm.
almost abstract it that we can almost be, but I think some respects with the algorithm aversion, it's so near to what we are doing ourselves that we can fear it to us, or some pathologists at least can fear it to a
Hmm.
certain degree. But
Yes.
I think it's going to be really interesting the way we maintain the pathologist's skill and at the same time optimize automation. And I've been thinking about what can you do? And I think, for example, in radiology, they talk about having AI free periods where you switch off the AI and you have to use your own knowledge, a bit and
Hmm.
see. The other one is that I've
Maybe
heard
that should
they
be integrated into the software like
exactly.
automatically. Sometimes you just
Yeah.
don't get the markup and you have to do
Yeah.
it yourself.
Exactly. And the other one I've seen to make sure or heard of, I haven't actually seen a product, is that when you're doing quality control of pathologists, that you actually put in a system which is wrong. It is opposite to what you and check the pathologist doesn't just agree with it anyway. So something that is really obviously it's benign, but you've highlighted as a grade 5 decent, and then just check that the pathologist is not, maybe put 4 or 5 of those in a daily routine for 1 day in 6 months and see what happens.
Oh,
Because,
interesting.
to
But
keep
then
it,
what do you do with all the other results? It's always like, oh, if the pathologist failed, then are you like taking away everything they
yeah,
had
yeah, it's going to come
before?
up with a lot of questions, but I think it's going to
Yes.
be, I
I
think,
mean, it's questions we have to ask each other
yeah,
and
exactly. And
and
these
and
are fun
figure out
questions that
answers.
how do sort of how do we make sure? Because you can have, if you think about errors of omission, you can have errors of omission where you're missing critical findings not flagged by the
Mhm.
AI, for example. Then you can also have errors of commission where you're accepting incorrect things that the AI has done.
Mhm.
And how do we sort of have interfaces that highlight the possibility of these? Highlight, so, okay, I'm focusing on I'm focused on this cancer, but maybe there's an inflammatory component going on elsewhere that I haven't looked. But I've been so focused because AI is highlighting it on heat map this, but I haven't seen this. So and the solution is in the AI itself. So this doesn't mean that AI is useless. This means that we can solve this problem somehow by the interface and how we highlight things and how we make maybe checklists. Have you done this,
Mhm.
this, this, this? Okay, yes, I have. I can sign it out. So really
Mhm.
exciting, and it shouldn't be used to negate the potential of AI. It should be used to understand it and develop things to make it even better.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, if someone was interested in starting working with AI tools in their practice, so in diagnostics, for example, what would you recommend as the first step? Somebody has a diagnostic practice and they want to do AI. What do they do?
Well, first of all, I think they would see. I
We
mean,
call Aiforia, right?
yeah, exactly. And we sort it all out. No, I think first of all, it is really important to choose a company really carefully because you're not buying software. You're buying a relationship. You're buying a
Mhm.
system. You're buying something where you will have quite a close relationship with that company for a period. So you have to know that it's not like you just deliver. You buy it on PlayStation, you buy a game, and that's it.
Mhm.
There's an incredible process of sort of integration, optimization that I think most pathologists maybe don't understand that is part of the process of implementing AI. If you get an AI model and you put it into your system, we don't expect it to work perfectly when we just use it as the raw model. We expect a period of optimization and
Mhm.
with those, and that's holding us being regular meetings, discussing problems, uh, taking images from them and annotating so we optimize the model into their system because all sort of systems are different, or stains are different, or a stain in Seville is different to a stain in thing. That's subtly different, and AI really picks up on those. So I would say, really do pick the company that you're going to choose that has
That you like.
firstly a pathologist available, because that's who you
Yes.
want to talk to. That's who you want to be able to have a discussion with. But also who's going to be there and he's going to be understanding the problems you're having and allow you to go through it. Secondly, think, what do you want to get out of that model? What is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to save time? Are you trying to reduce inter and intra observer variation? Probably all of the above in many respects. But what is it that you want that model to do, and what organs do you want them to do? Because I think breast and prostate are the most prominent in AI human pathology. So do you have the caseloads for those, for example, to justify taking it? It's a cost. And you need to have quite a number of cases to make it worth doing. So I think if I was looking to implement, I would first of all think, what do I want to achieve from this? I think you need to have really clear goals about what you want to get out of AI. It sounds really sexy and amazing and technological, and I think a lot of people maybe want that. But what do you want to get out of it? Is the first question you should ask, and also discuss that with pathologists. Do you have a team that are engaged and also want
Yes.
to take on this technology and are ready to take it?
Very important that want to, because there's going to be troubleshooting in like both aspects, like a company that you like, the people that you like that has the expertise in pathology expertise in-house, and people who want to do it, who want to keep troubleshooting, because there's going to be a period of troubleshooting,
Yeah,
like with any IT integration.
exactly.
So
And this
super
is
important
expectation management. That
as well.
the companies have to be clear about what is the reality, what is the process. This process is something that might take 6 months, a year, maybe shorter. But what the process is, so that you don't get a bunch of pathologists who they start with an algorithm, they think, oh man, this doesn't work, or this isn't working how I thought it would work, and then they stop using it. That's a disservice to pathology, and it's a disservice to AI. And you have to find a way of bringing those two together so they can start. And I have to say, people who start with AI pathologists now, they are real trailblazers. They are the ones who are starting the future. So
Yes, my
these
digital pathology trailblazers. Those are
exactly.
the people who are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, and these people, these hospitals, these health regions that are going in for it, they're the ones that are setting the ground for the future. They're amazing. It's amazing that they are doing it. They're seeing the future. They're seeing the prospects of it and the future capabilities, and they're going for it. And I think they should really get a lot of praise for that, because it is a little bit jumping in the dark for them.
It
So
is.
but they don't need to jump alone. They can jump with Aiforia.
Right? I'm gonna link to the like a demo page in the show notes, so that anybody who wants to learn more about the system can do that. Um, what's the best way to contact you if people wanted to talk to you? Is there a way?
Yeah, of course. I can give my email, and people can just contact me and send if they have questions, if they have any interest, any ideas, just fire them to me. I love that sort of thing. I think
What's your Aiforia email? Let's leave your Aiforia email.
it's richard.doughty at Aiforia.
Okay, I'm gonna leave this in the show notes as well.
Exactly.
And if somebody wants to learn more,
Yeah, and if
then
they disagree with what I've said, question me. That's absolutely fine. We can have a discussion about it, because nobody's right in this particular situation. So
oh, it's
and
figuring out still.
yeah, and the way we get better is by discussing it, by maybe disagreeing and finding out what is common ground and things like that. So I think uh, please contact, and if I can help, I will.
Thank you so much for joining me. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure having you on the show, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much for staying till the end. It means you are a true digital pathology trailblazer. And thank you so much to Aiforia for sponsoring this episode. If you're interested in developing AI for your practice, for your research, feel free to contact them. There's going to be a link in the show notes or in the description, wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. There's also a lot of content that we created together with them. So I'm going to link to the Aiforia playlist. So if there's anything there that sparks your interest, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or via email if you're on my mailing list. And if you're not on the mailing list, the best way is to get this book, Digital Pathology One-on-One, which you can download from digitalpathologyplace.com. And this is perfect for people who are starting their digital pathology journey, or for those who have expertise in a specific area, like I used to have in image analysis. And then I wanted to learn all the other aspects. So the PDF is for free on digitalpathologyplace.com. And there's a copy on Amazon as well. So grab your book, and I talk to you in the next episode.